Hello everybody, welcome back to another Hearthstone video. This one's going to be different than ones I've done in the past because we're going to be talking about the metagame as it's happening, meta shaping, how to address that, progress of the game, overarching ideas of the game. So a lot to get into. I'm just going to get started. Now, ever since a couple days ago when I produced the video what Reynad was talking about, where he talked about corridor creeper patches and the way these impact the game, I've been very curious because I've always been more of a control player. I'm not very interested traditionally in the faster type decks, but I wanted to experiment with what he was talking about, and I have been having a lot of fun with it, a lot of wins too at that. I wanted to see if this is as powerful as it seems, and if so, provide more data that, yeah, this needs a fix. I'm not the best person to make such claims, but I just want to say right now that I don't think it's that big of a deal, and here's why. In games like this, you have kind of like a rock, paper, scissors of face, mid-range, and control type decks. Each one of these is weak to one, strong against the other, and it keeps things fresh. And just because they're strong or weak doesn't mean that the match is decided up front. That's just, where the deck has problems. And you don't want decks like Control to get too strong, or else that's everything everybody will play, and it'll be stagnant and uninteresting. Corridor Creeper is a way to kind of keep Control decks on their toes. A way to kind of like threaten facey type decks. And it's not the only card like this in the set. We have things like Spiteful Summoner, we have things like Arcane, I can't think of his name right now, the 4/4 that you play for free if you play a spell 5 or more. So each of these major playstyles have been getting cards in the set to help bolster their efforts. And the thing to keep in mind is any game where the content's constantly being fresh, you're going to have some form of power creep, and these are just examples of that power creep. In vanilla, you never would have had something like Spiteful Summoner. Now's the time for something like that. And I'm not saying definitively, maybe they jumped the shark, I don't know. But the point being is it doesn't seem as if Corridor Creeper's OP. We have things against it, things that can shut it down, etc. Which brings us to one of the more interesting, exciting, and popular decks right now that's at least being explored and talked about, and that is Cube Warlock. For those who haven't seen it, they basically cheat out demons like Doomguard and Void Lord, I think it's called, and Gul'dan. You got the Cube, Carnivorous Cube, which basically duplicates these if you can kill it off, which Warlock can. So it leads to two different paradigms here. You either have like a wall of taunts, or you have an army of Doom Guards just basically rushing you down out of nowhere. Both of which are pretty scary, and they work well together. One holds your opponent at bay until they can get the combo off, etc., etc. Now, about mid to late yesterday, I was getting a little discouraged because my Tempo Rogue deck here actually kept running up against them. And not only was I getting shut down, but I was getting shut down in a way that I didn't see this deck being able to overcome. So I got a little discouraged. I started trying to play that Warlock deck myself. I tried a few Priest builds. I even saw a post by Disguised Toast talking about how Quest Mage would be a good way to beat these Warlocks. And it's true. Ice Block shuts down one-turn kill combos, and their win condition basically doesn't care what their health is at or how many taunts they have. It just kills them with spells. So, and I don't like that Quest Mage is a thing. I abhor it, but I was willing to try it, and I wasn't all that great at it. Which brings us to this morning, where I woke up and I kept losing because I was going up against faster decks. I was like, where was all the Warlocks? So I was like, okay, maybe it's time to get the Tempo Rogue back out. I did, and I started getting them wins again, and it was a lot of fun. But here's the main thing that I wanted to talk about. The Warlocks that I did go up against either had bad draws or weren't playing it well enough, and I was just able to steamroll them. And that's where we're at right now. If you look back at Knights of the Frozen Throne, there was a time where Highlander Priest's official win rate was unbelievably low for as powerful and successful as the deck was. And the reason for this was that because of its popularity and power level, people were picking it up that either didn't have the skill or didn't have the practice playing it. I'm describing myself here as I tried this Warlock deck, as I tried Quest Mage. So now is a good time to strike, because even though you're going to see a lot of these warlocks, they're not all going to be playing all that well, and you'll punish them. They'll lose interest in it. So this is kind of a way to push back by just punishing the bad player. So I just wanted to make that point. That's the main point of this video. Now, for those who are interested in a temple rogue such like this, I did want to discuss some ideas regarding it and my experiences. First of all, it's not the cheapest deck to build, but unless you literally just started playing, then there's a good chance a lot of these cards you already have. Temple Rogue was the second most popular deck for the last half of Knights of the Frozen Throne once the patch went live. So a lot of people are going to have a lot of these cards already. So I wouldn't let its dust cost scare you outright. There's a good chance you already have these cards, or a good portion of them. I personally don't always play Southsea Deckhand on turn 1, even though it would sift patches out. Obviously, if you have Prince Keleseth on turn 2, you're going to want to wait to bring patches out until after that. But I wait until turn 3 for the Southsea Deckhand, if that is in fact my turn 3 play, because I can dagger up and play the Southsea, and then I have the dagger. If I didn't already have one, I've got the Deckhand as a charger, patches comes out as a charger. It's a good way to swing, board control, that kind of thing. I'm not saying I'm right about that, but that's my own personal approach. There was a game earlier I was playing against a Paladin, and I was like, no, it's just too important that I controlled the board right from the get-go. So I played the Southsea Deckhand on turn 1, and it worked. I was in control of the board the entire game. Now, there's a lot of different, there's a lot of different faster decks like Paladin out there right now, and that's one of the reasons why I would recommend Rogue in particular. It's not only my favorite class, but it's really good at controlling the early game, because like Backstab, SI7 Agent, Vilespine Slayer, these are all amazing tempo plays. You got charges, you got weapon. You can really make a good effort to develop your board while controlling your opponent's board at the same time, making favorable trades, etc., etc. Another thing to talk about is that if you're going to play Elven Minstrel on a turn, do that first if at all possible. And the reason for this is because if you should happen to draw a Corridor Creeper, then any trades you need to make on the board will actually start reducing its casting cost. You don't want to make your trades first, then draw out the Corridor Creeper and have it sitting in your hand full cost. In fact, you can even get Corridor Creeper's cost so far down that it can be like a combo starter for Vilespine Slayer on turn 5. When that happens, that's amazing. I think the big thing to discuss in this particular list is Sonya Shadowdancer, because she's new. She might seem situational. She's legendary, so not everybody's going to have her, and not everybody's going to know whether or not they should craft her. So I want to give you my experience thus far. I do think she's worth it if you're going to be playing a lot of Rogue or a lot of this deck in particular. But she is the card in this list that's most likely to be a dead card, and I want to address that. Prince Keleseth in this deck is one of those things. If you draw it early, his effect is amazing. If you draw it late, not so much. So there's going to be times where he doesn't influence the game at all. Okay, and the same thing is going to be true with Sonya Shadowdancer. There's going to be times where she is a dead card. I'm not going to lie, but you shouldn't let that dissuade you, because there's also going to be times where, say you play Prince Keleseth on turn 2, and then you play Shadowdancer on turn 3, kill off your Keleseth. Well, now you get to play Keleseth again in the early game, and as we know from Knights of the Frozen Throne, that can be huge. The fact that you do have multiple chargers in this deck, I actually had a clip featured on Summoned, which is a YouTube channel that does Hearthstone highlights, where I was able to throw out my chargers and basically get 1/1 copies of them back. You can throw out patches over and over and over again as a machine gun. If you have Southsea Captain in play, it's even better. Of course, every single time one of these dies, it builds reduces the cost of your Corridor Creeper. Every time one is played, you start buffing up your Edwin VanCleef. And Edwin VanCleef is another idea I wanted to talk about in this deck. Is certainly one I had to learn, and that is, don't be so greedy with him that you never play him, and don't be in such a rush to play him that you make bad plays. I see this in Tempo or Miracle Rogue all the time, where they're in such a rush to play the biggest VanCleef possible that they basically put all their eggs in one basket. Bottom of that basket falls out, and they've got nothing left. We have Fireflies in the deck, 0 cost spells, 1 cost minions. Sonya gives you 1 cost minions. You're always going to have ways to get a moderate-sized VanCleef, so just make sure you use it at the right time. Play the deck more and more, you'll learn what that is in fact. Obviously, Cairne Bloodhoof's kind of iffy in this deck. I think mainly he's in the list because you have a 6 casting cost that's likely to stick. You got a Bonemare target in theory, and that's another reason for Sonya Shadowdancer's Bonemare, Vilespine Slayer. Like just about every card in this deck to get a 1/1 copy of would be great. The one exception would be Leeroy, obviously, because having a 1/1 charger that gives them 2/2 in stats usually isn't going to be worth it. And that's the other thing. The last thing I wanted to say as far as strategy in this deck is don't be too worried about your Shadowstep. If you can use it in the early game against Prince Keleseth, that's great. If you can use it on SI7 agent, for example, that's great. You can use it and the 1/1 you bring to your, or the reduced cost minion in your hand to help buff up your VanCleef. Later on in the game, Vilespine Slayer, Bonemare, these are great targets to Shadowstep. I had games against a control where I Shadowstepped my Bonemare, not because I had any use for it that turn, but I just wanted to thin out my board so that when they Dragonfire, Potion, or whatever, I literally didn't lose everything. So deck's a lot of fun. Play it if you like, but that's going to do it for me in this video. By all means, let me know what you guys are thinking. I released a video a couple days ago where there was a lot of back and forth in the comment section that didn't even involve me, and I think that's great. I like to see people talking. I like all of us discussing these ideas. I just put forth a lot of ideas I have about this particular deck, and I might be wrong, so by all means, correct me. Let me know what your experiences are. Hit that like and subscribe if you do think I have earned it. And let me know what else you'd like to talk about. I hope you guys are enjoying this expansion, enjoying the meta right now. I know I certainly am. And but that'll do it for me today. See you in the next one. You guys take care.